Become who you're afraid to be. There's a hallway inside you. Dark, silent, full of closed doors. You walk through it every day, every time you wake up and put on the mask, every time you smile when you want to cry, every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart inside. You rush through this hallway, busy, distracted, putting out fires, meeting obligations, never stopping to look at the doors. But something brought you here today, and I need to tell you a story. A few years ago, I was sitting in an empty room, late at night. Everyone had gone home, and in front of me, on the table, was a proposal, an opportunity I had waited for my entire life. The paper was right there, the pen in my hand, and I couldn't sign it. I stared at that document and felt my heart racing, my palms sweating, a knot tightening in my throat. And then, the voice started. You know this voice. It doesn't shout, it whispers. Who do you think you are? You're not ready. Remember the last time you tried something like this? Remember how much it hurt? Better to wait, better to prepare more, better not to risk it. And I stood up, put the pen down, and walked away. That night, lying in the dark, I told myself I had been careful, that it was smart to wait, that the right moment would come. But deep down, in that place where we can't lie to ourselves, I knew. It wasn't caution. It was fear. But not the fear I thought. I believed I was afraid of failing, but that wasn't it. I was afraid of succeeding, afraid of becoming the person I could be, afraid of shining. And this fear, I would later discover, had a name, had an origin, and had been living in that dark hallway inside me for a very, very long time. Maybe you know this hallway. Maybe you also have doors you've never opened. Maybe you also carry a version of yourself that has never seen the light of day. If you're here, it's not by accident. Something in you is ready to look. Carl Jung, one of the great explorers of the human soul, spent his life mapping this inner territory. He descended to the places where most of us are afraid to go. And down there, in the dark, he found something. Not a monster, not some evil darkness, something far more human and far more sad. He called it the shadow. But I like to think of the doors. Each door in that hallway holds a part of you, a part that once was alive, that once wanted to exist, that once tried to show itself, and was locked away. Do you remember? Maybe you were small, 4 years old, 5, 6, and you did something spontaneous, something true, something that came straight from your core, unfiltered, unmasked. Maybe you cried when you were sad, and someone said, "Stop that, you're overreacting." Maybe you exploded in anger when you were treated unfairly, and someone said, "That's ugly, good kids don't act like that." Maybe you shined, got the best grade, danced in the middle of the room, sang too loud, and someone looked at you in a way that made you feel like you were wrong, like you were too much, like you needed to shrink. You didn't understand what happened, but your body understood. Your body learned, this is dangerous, this makes love go away. So you did what any child would do to survive. You locked that part behind a door and kept walking through the hallway. Over time, you locked more and more doors. The door to your anger, the door to your sadness, the door to your wild joy, the door to your true voice, the door to your desires, the door to your ambition, the door to your light. And in place of those parts, you created a character, an acceptable character, predictable, safe, the strong one who never breaks down, the nice one who never complains, the responsible one who never fails, the one who's always fine, even when falling apart inside. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And there's nothing wrong with the mask. We all need one to function in society. The problem starts when the mask gets stuck. When you wear it for so long, you forget it's a mask. When you start believing you are the character. And the locked parts? They don't die. They don't disappear. They stay there, behind the doors, in the dark.
Here's what almost no one understands about this hallway. Behind those doors aren't just your flaws. It's not just the anger you hid. It's not just the fear you buried. Behind those doors are your gifts. Think about it. If you learned in childhood that ambition was ugly, where did your ambition go? If you learned that sensitivity was weakness, where did your ability to feel deeply go? If you learned that standing out was dangerous, where did your light go? It all went behind the doors, not because it was bad, but because someone taught you it was. And now, years later, you walked through this hallway carrying an emptiness you can't explain. You wake up in the morning and something is missing. You achieve things and feel nothing. You look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. And in the moments of silence, when there's no distraction, a question appears. Who am I really? I'll tell you. You are the sum of everything in the hallway. What's visible and what's hidden. The character and the locked parts. The mask and the face beneath it. And as long as half of you is trapped in the dark, you'll keep living half a life. You'll keep feeling like something's missing. You'll keep asking. You know that feeling of playing a role in your own life? Of watching from the outside while someone else lives in your place? That's the distance between who you've become and who you really are. It's the echo of the parts left behind. Calling. Waiting. Wanting to come home. But the doors don't stay silent. They creak, they rattle, they demand. You may not notice, but the parts you locked away are constantly trying to return. And when they can't come through the front, they come through the back. Let me show you. You're at work. Someone makes a comment, something small, a silly criticism, and out of nowhere you explode, or shut down, or feel a rage so disproportionate that later you think, what was that? Where did that come from? It came from a door. You're in a relationship. Things are going well. There's love, there's connection, and then for no apparent reason, you start sabotaging, creating problems, pushing the person away. And later, when it all falls apart, you think, why do I always do this? Because there's a door you haven't opened. You're about to take an important step, something you want, something you deserve. The path is clear, and then comes the paralysis, the procrastination, the excuses that seem so logical. It's not the right time. I need to prepare more. What if it doesn't work out? That's not caution. That's a door you locked long ago, making noise so it won't be forgotten. Jung said something that struck me when I first read it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You look at the patterns that keep repeating in your life, the same type of relationship with different faces, the same type of problem in different contexts, the same feeling of almost making it but never quite. And you think it's bad luck, karma, fate. But it's not. It's the doors. It's the parts of you that, unable to exist in the light, sabotage from the dark. They don't do this out of malice. They do it because it's the only way they found to say, I'm still here. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be seen. And until you look, it will keep knocking. Sometimes as anxiety with no explanation. Sometimes as sadness that shows up in the middle of a good day. Sometimes as rage that explodes at someone who didn't deserve it. Sometimes as paralysis in front of everything you want most. The shadow prefers the familiar hell to the unknown paradise.
That sentence changed my life when I finally understood it. The shadow keeps you in the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. Because to the shadow, the unknown is more dangerous. Back then, when you were small, it learned that new things hurt, that trying hurts, that being seen is risky. So it holds you back. In the job that makes you sick, but is safe. In the relationship that diminishes you, but is familiar. In the small life that doesn't belong to you, but doesn't scare you. It thinks it's protecting you, but the protection became a prison, and you, without knowing, are serving a sentence that isn't yours. Now, I want to ask you a question. Before your mind answers, let it land somewhere deeper. Who are you afraid of becoming? Most people, when they hear this question, think of their flaws. I'm afraid of becoming bitter. I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of ending up alone. But I'm going to tell you something you may have never heard. That's not what you're really afraid of. The deepest fear there is, the one almost no one admits, isn't the fear of failure. It's the fear of shining. I know it sounds strange. Why would anyone be afraid of succeeding? There's a door in that hallway you avoid more than all the others. It's not the door to your anger. It's not the door to your sadness. It's the door to your power. Behind it is the version of you that speaks your mind, that sets boundaries without guilt, that takes up space without apologizing, that shines without fear of outshining, that thrives without shame, that loves without holding back. Imagine this version for a moment. Feel it. It's a little scary, isn't it? Because if you became this person, everything would have to change. You'd have to leave the safety of being small. You'd have to step out of the role you've been playing for years. You'd have to disappoint people who like you the way you are, who need you to stay small so they can feel okay. You'd have to stop hiding. You'd have to take responsibility for your own power. You'd have to look in the mirror and admit, I always could. I just didn't. Greatness demands that you stop being the victim. And deep down, a lot of people don't want to give up that role. Because the victim has excuses. The victim has explanations. The victim can keep dreaming without ever having to act. But the creator, the protagonist, the one who owns their life, they have nowhere to hide. They are responsible. They have to live according to what they know.
And that's why that door stays closed. Not because you're weak, but because opening it requires a courage most people never find. The courage to be who you really are. The courage to face the consequences. The courage to shine, even knowing some will hate you for it. Here's the truth that can change everything. You're not afraid of your flaws. You're afraid of your power. Let that land.
Because the moment you claim that power, there's no going back. You'll have to live according to what you've seen. And that is terrifying and liberating. The shadow is not your enemy. I know it might seem that way, that it sabotages, that it holds you back, that it keeps you trapped, but it doesn't do this out of malice. Here's the thing, it does it out of love, a distorted love, a love that no longer knows the difference between protecting and imprisoning, but still love. Come back with me to that hallway. Stay with me here. Picture the closed doors, and now imagine that behind each door is a child, a version of you at 5 years old, 7, 10, each one carrying a part that was rejected. The child who cried and was told they were weak, the child who stood out and was criticized, the child who loved and was abandoned. These children are not monsters. They are parts of you that hid to survive, and the shadow is their guardian. It locked the doors not to punish you, but to protect you. It looked at the world and said, "Out there is dangerous. If these parts show up, we'll suffer again. Better to keep them here." And it did, for years, for decades. The problem is, you grew up. The world changed. You're not that defenseless child anymore. But the shadow doesn't know that. It keeps operating from the old map, keeps protecting you from dangers that no longer exist, keeps you small to keep you safe. It's like a soldier who never got the news that the war is over, still standing guard, still defending, still firing, not knowing it's peacetime now. When you understand this, something shifts. You stop fighting the shadow, stop being angry, stop wanting to destroy it, and start looking at it with compassion, the way you'd look at a scared child who just wants to protect you. That's the first step on the way home. It's not war, it's reconciliation. There's a moment in the life of everyone who is waking up. It's not a moment you schedule. It arrives, sometimes with violence, a loss that shatters you, an illness that stops you, an abandonment that throws you to the ground. Sometimes with softness, a sleepless night, a book that falls into your hands, a sentence someone says without knowing the weight it carries. Sometimes for no apparent reason. You're living your normal life, doing the usual things, and suddenly something shifts. A silence settles in, and in that silence you hear, not with your ears, with something deeper. You hear the sound of a door opening. Imagine you're in that hallway again, the same closed doors as always, but this time you're not running, you're standing still, and one of the doors is slightly open, a faint light coming through. You feel afraid. Of course you do. You spent years avoiding this door, putting things in front of it, pretending it didn't exist, and now it's open. You can do what you've always done, turn your back, start running again, pretend you didn't see. Or you can step closer, slowly, one step at a time. And when you finally arrive, when you look through the crack, what you see is not a monster. It's you, a version of you, small, frightened, alone in the dark for so long, looking at you with eyes that say, "You finally came." This is the moment when everything can change. You can close the door again. Many people do. They get close, they look, they feel too much, and they run.
Or you can do something different. You can walk in, sit beside this part, and say what it has needed to hear for decades. I see you. You don't have to hide anymore. I came to get you. And when you do this, something extraordinary happens. The fear begins to dissolve. What seemed threatening reveals itself as wounded. What seemed dark reveals itself as simply forgotten. And the energy you spent keeping that door closed, the energy you used to repress, to hide, to run, it's released and comes back to you. What you embrace stops controlling you. What you integrate becomes strength. This is the meeting, the beginning of the journey home. How do you do this in practice? I'm not going to give you a formula. There is no formula. Every hallway is different. Every door holds something unique. Every person has their own timing. But I can share what I learned walking through mine. First, you stop. That alone is revolutionary. In a world that taught you to run, stopping is an act of rebellion. You stop and you look at the patterns that keep repeating, at the reactions that surprise you, at the moments when you betray yourself. When do you say yes when you mean no? When do you shrink to fit? When do you swallow the truth to keep the peace? These are the clues. Each one points to a door. Then you make room for it. This is harder than it sounds, because when you start seeing the parts that were hidden, the first impulse is to reject. That's not me. I don't want that in me. But that rejection is exactly what created the shadow in the first place. So this time, you do it differently. You breathe, you look, and you say, even if your voice shakes, this is also me. This can also exist. It's not about liking what you see. It's about stopping the war with yourself. Then you listen. The shadow has things to tell you. It's been trying to speak for years, but you were too busy, running too fast, fleeing too hard. Now you stop and ask, what do you need from me? What are you trying to show me? And you wait. The answer might come as an emotion, as a memory, as a dream, as a certainty that arrives from nowhere. It doesn't matter how it comes. What matters is that you're finally available to hear. And then you choose, because there comes a time when understanding isn't enough. You need to act. You need to set the boundary you always swallowed. You need to speak the truth you always hid. You need to take the step you always postponed. And yes, you'll be scared. The shadow will scream that it's dangerous, will remind you of every time it went wrong, will convince you that this time won't be different. And still, you go. Not because the fear is gone, but because you're bigger than the fear. Every small, true action is a door that opens. Every honest word is a part that returns. Every boundary you set is a piece of your power reclaimed. That's how it's done. Not all at once, one step at a time, one door at a time, one truth at a time.
And a day comes. A day when you realize there's no going back. You've opened too many doors, seen too many truths, felt too many things. The mask doesn't fit anymore. The character doesn't convince anymore. The small life doesn't fit anymore. This is the day of the crossing. The day you decide to become who you're afraid to be. Why afraid? Because this version is powerful. It doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't shrink to fit. It doesn't negotiate its truth. It doesn't beg for love. This version of you isn't an improved version. It's the original version. It's you before everything. Before the criticism, before the rejection, before the wounds that taught you to hide. And to find it, you'll have to leave a lot behind.
You'll have to disappoint people, people who got used to the character, who like you convenient, who need you to stay small so they can feel okay. You'll have to break patterns, habits that gave you comfort, even the comfort of prison, routines that kept you too busy to feel, distractions that kept you from looking. You'll have to let masks fall, characters you played for so long you forgot they were characters. And you'll have to die. Not literally, but the person you built to survive will have to die, so the person you really are can be born. This hurts. I won't lie to you. It hurts because the character is all you know. It's your story. It's who you thought you were for years. Letting go feels like losing everything, but it's not. It's gaining everything. Because on the other side of this death is a life you've never lived. A life where you don't have to pretend anymore, where you can finally breathe deep, where you belong to yourself before you belong to anyone else. The crossing demands courage, the courage to look at the unknown and go anyway, the courage to leave behind what's familiar for what's true, the courage to be who you're afraid to be. Not because you're not afraid, but because you're tired of letting fear decide. And when you cross, something happens. The doors you opened are no longer empty. The parts you rescued come back to you. Not all at once, little by little, like pieces of a puzzle you didn't even know was incomplete. Your voice comes back, not the rehearsed voice you used to please, the real voice, the one that says what it thinks, the one that stands for what it believes, the one that doesn't ask permission to exist. Your anger comes back, not as destruction, as protection, as the energy that finally knows how to say no, that finally defends what's yours. Your sensitivity comes back, not as weakness, as power, as the ability to feel everything and still keep going. Your joy comes back, that wild joy from childhood, the one that didn't need a reason, the one that existed just because. Your light comes back, the one you learned to hide, the one they told you was too bright. It comes back without shame. It comes back in peace. Your ambition comes back, not as greed, as direction, as the force that moves you toward what you were born to do. Your self-worth comes back, the certainty, finally, that you are enough, that you always were. And something extraordinary happens. You realize you never needed to become someone. You just needed to stop hiding who you already were. The energy that was trapped is released. The power that was hidden emerges, and you understand, maybe for the first time, what it means to be whole. Not perfect, whole, with your lights and your shadows, with your strengths and your wounds, with everything you are, finally reunited, finally at peace, finally home. I started by telling you about a hallway, dark, full of closed doors. Now let me show you something else. The same hallway, but with the doors open, light pouring through all of them, and you standing in the middle, whole for the first time. This image is not a dream, it's a possibility. It's what happens when you stop running and start opening. It won't happen tomorrow. It won't happen all at once. It's a path, a journey, a process that lasts a lifetime. But it starts with one step, one door, one truth. Maybe today. I don't know which door is yours. I don't know what's hidden in your hallway, but you know. Deep down, you always knew. The version of you that scares you is not a monster. It's your power. It's your truth. It's the life that's waiting to be lived. And it's right there, on the other side of fear, waiting for you to have the courage to open. You don't need to become anyone. You just need to return to who you always were. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the guardian of your greatest gifts. It kept everything while you couldn't carry it, and now it's ready to give it back. All you have to do is go get it. There's a hallway inside you, and there's a door waiting to be opened. What you find on the other side is not darkness, it's you, whole, free, finally home.